Hi, I'm Michelle. This is my so-called handmade life. I have a blog by the same name, and that's my name on Instagram. On Ravelry, I am Mamatronic. This is a knitting, crochet, whatever I feel like making and talking about kind of podcast where I ask you questions, you answer, and we talk about whatever you said the next week. So you help shape our dialogue, and I hope you'll keep commenting. Oh my gosh, so many of you commented on the last episode. It made me so happy. I know I was slow to respond. I was out of town and sick and had this part-time job that just went all of a sudden crazy. But I was reading your comments, and then I have since responded. But I love that you went ahead and responded to one another and kept that going. There's a knit along we're doing right now, knit and crochet along, a make along. Basically do whatever you want to get rid of your stash kind of along. So it's Stashbusting the new year. That's the hashtag. And if you make anything that's getting rid of your stash, and remember, the term stash is really subjective. It's whatever you think it is. So it could be fairly new, really old. Anything that gets rid of it, encourage the rest of us, use that hashtag. And it's like an informal knit along for January and February of 2023. And then I'll have, I don't know, I'll randomly draw somebody who's posted on Instagram. I'll randomly draw and have a prize of some sort. It's not about stuff. Clearly, it's about getting rid of stuff. So a lot of you responded, and I just don't think I realized how trending the topic of stash busting is. I went this morning, like before church, I was like having my coffee and I just scrolled and I like said, I don't know, Stash 2023 organization. And there was a million YouTube videos that came up, and I saw a lot of similarities. First of all, I saw a lot of people with a stash that they felt was unmanageable. That to me was so nice. Like, if all of your stash that's so unruly can fit on one piece of furniture, girl, you're doing good. You are doing good. That's what I think. I saw a lot of plastic Rubbermaid type tote tubs like I have. I saw lots of people organizing their stash in cubbies, in shelving units, plastic drawers in like closet units, IKEA, Ivor, and Kallax bookshelves with baskets and collapsible, stackable cubbies and hanging shoe organizers like full of yarn. I saw a lot of those same themes. A lot of people actually buying furniture to store their yarn in, which I don't have anything against anyone doing that. But personally for me, I do not want to buy anything new to serve this yarn idol I have created. I have a shelf. I did buy a wire shelf for storing camera gear so I wouldn't get damaged in a closet. And you know what? Yarn has been tucked in all around, and maybe that's great for cushioning the gear, but it's a mess. I don't want to do anything else like that. I want to get stuff like, I want to use it. I do have some goals I'll share with you later about basic stuff that's in my line of sight, but the stuff that's out of sight, I kind of just want it to stay out of sight, but be using it constantly. So the stash I saw that was comparable to mine was Stitch and Friction, I think, or was it Stitch and Fiction? I don't remember. It was a podcast. I don't know. I'll put it down here. I'm the worst. And I don't wear my glasses ever, so I'm getting all your names screwed up. Between autocorrect and my memory and my vision, yeah. Her stash looked similar to mine. It was in the big Rubbermaid tubs that were not see-through, and she made a comment that if it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and then she would buy more. She had like 4 bins that she didn't remember the yarn in it at all. Didn't remember purchasing it. I think I remember purchasing everything that I have, but that's an amazingly good aspect of my memory for some reason. I can never remember when I need to change the oil or how many miles are on my car, but I can totally remember all those yarn purchases, but that doesn't mean it's good that I have them. My issue in my other house was that I had it all in the garage and it was just hard to get to, like stored in bins. And so I think I would just say, oh, well, I'm at the store. Oh, it's on sale. I'll grab some more anyway. That was one of my issues. So what she did in that video, and I'm linking everything here, was what I saw a lot of people doing. Putting things in open storage shelving in closets or other things so that you can see them, because the idea is if you see them, you'll remember them, enjoy them, and want to use them. Personally, I just don't think that's going to matter for me. I'm not at a place where I feel tempted to buy yarn. So I don't want it everywhere. Yeah, I don't want to be like that SpongeBob episode where all the furniture is made out of dirty diapers when he and Patrick were raising a baby starfish. I don't want the yarn equivalent of that. So I saw Melanie of Braid and Tinker made a really cute video that I've linked for you guys where she's talking about this concept of stashing down. And of course, her thoughts were a little different. She is talking about why she does want to maintain a stash, but it sounds like a really balanced stash. And she was saying she would just like medium stash, because medium stash is enough to work with for, like, she has these mix and match stash busting projects. She can't do them without a stash, but she doesn't want it to take over her life. And I definitely think hashtag medium stash should totally be a t-shirt. And in fact, I have a bunch of t-shirt ideas for you guys. Another concept she discussed that I actually have totally missed. I mean, I hear people talk about, I have more yarn than I can use in my lifetime, but I didn't realize Sable, S-A-B-L-E, stash accumulation beyond life expectancy. I didn't realize that was a hashtag because I'm so not trending and out of the loop, but it is. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm like, I'm not Sable. I would say I'm almost Sable and not proud of it. Maybe that should be my t-shirt. Almost Sable and not proud of it. There's a whole range, a whole slew of hashtags that could come from this, like unstable Sable, almost Sable, not quite stable, or hashtag once Sable, now stable. I don't know if Sable is a bragging thing or if it's a fearful thing. I can't tell. For me, that would be a little fear-inducing. We could make t-shirts. I could wear a new t-shirt every episode and then have a little drop-down link where you could click on it and you could just start building a t-shirt stash about destashing your yarn. But I'm not going to do that to you because I love you and we want to get rid of stuff. Why don't we all just buy Hanes t-shirts and take a marker to it? Unstable and like really unstable looking handwriting, like my typical print handwriting, unstable Sable. If you do that, oh my gosh, I will love you. Okay, so that was the weirdest tangent. I'm sorry. Melanie was talking about like a lot of people, and she feels like possibly it's in the US because of the way houses are set up to have a ton of storage, which I talked about in that last episode, how like 2,000 square feet or more is the average house now. And we have off-site storage. So a lot of people have a craft room. I don't have a craft room. I don't want a craft room. If I were to ever sew and have to leave projects out, I would do that. But I don't know when that's ever going to happen. I do want our son's room to be a nice guest bedroom one day that maybe I could work out of one day if I wanted to. But right now I have to work downstairs because Potsy can't climb the stairs and he needs to be by my side at all times. In fact, right now he is at the bottom of the stairs looking up past our little Handmade doggy door. He's looking up longingly. So Melanie also discussed that it irks her that, I'm sorry, Melanie, I'm just talking about your video. I'm linking it though, but you said stuff I was interested in. Like it irks her when people feel like they have to hide their yarn purchases though. And you've seen the joke. It's kind of an easy joke to make, like, don't tell my husband I bought this. And I can see why that would bother you, Melanie. And if that was really the case, like somebody's partner is kind of a tyrant and they think your hobby's stupid, you shouldn't spend your money that way, that would suck. I do think, though, what a lot of that is a way of winking at a habit people have of saying, okay, I'm done, I've had enough. And they say it out loud and they want that to count when they're really going back and buying more. Like, I personally would be hurt if my husband said, okay, tight budget, I'm not going to spend any more on blank, and then he goes and he does it anyway, and it throws our budget off. That's like, I don't know how much of the yarn buying does that, but if any of you, I mean, like, you might not want to talk about it, but if any of you have found you're doing that, you're literally throwing your family budget off because you're like, oh, this looks good, I don't want to think about the budget and whether I can afford this, let me just grab it, it's on sale. I know I've done that with other things before, and I mostly talk to women, I don't talk to guys, I'm sure they do it, but I've heard tons of women talk about that with shopping and makeup and stuff like that. Or swinging by Starbucks, grabbing some fast food on a busy day. Totally understandable. I totally understand why anyone would do any of it, but sometimes I think we joke about don't tell the husband because people know they have a problem. And they've already told the husband, I'm not going to spend any more this month. And then they do it anyway. Or I'm just going to start using what I've got. And then more bills come in. So just thought I would put that out there because I definitely think that's a problem. And Melanie, it may not be in your life or for people around you, but most of my in real life people around me don't, I mean, almost none of them knit. But it is a problem for a lot of people in non-knitting stuff, so why wouldn't it be with yarn? Yarn is an easy impulse purchase when you're on Instagram. It's not so much for me now, but for a bit it was. And I was on Instagram more because at the time, I mean, I get now how to only see the people I follow. You guys taught me how. But it broke the magic spell, and I'm just not on Instagram that much, so I don't get sold to. But for a while, I was seeing and I liked all these dyers, and I love their artistic ability. Look, this is my scrolling hand. I just realized I've been doing that constantly. I liked the stuff they were doing, and so I would buy it, and it was impulse buys. But like, yarn is a pricey impulse buy. Like, I get why you get to the checkout counter and you just grab a few sticks of gum, a pack of M&Ms, or a beef jerky. But yarn is not beef jerky. It's like one skein is probably at a yarn shop going to be at least $28 or something. So I get why people feel that impulse to overspend. And then why they feel a little ashamed. And they want to pretend they're still abiding by the budget they set for themselves. I get all of it. So my thoughts are that the joking is mostly just people trying to have an easy gag online. But behind that, there's like a darker side to purchasing and hiding it, because hiding it, like, you want to share it with your friends, but you don't really want to own up to the fact that you really weren't supposed to spend this money and you're throwing the budget out of whack. So there's just that thought. Melanie also mentioned, yeah, if there's a fire, think of what's going to happen to all of your yarn. Debbie, you had said that when you would watch podcasters show all like sweaters quantities worth of yarn they would buy with their yarn hauls, that you would be kind of trying to do the math, adding up what that would have cost, and then just get like overwhelmed and say, forget it, it's super expensive. I used to live in an area where I would have to evacuate for hurricanes like every other year. Some years twice in one hurricane season. And I remember thinking, you know, like, if my home floods and all the contents are floating down the street, I will grieve losing family mementos, any kind of photos or movies or whatever of my family. But I would be embarrassed for like rescuers to be like riding their little boats down the street and seeing like all this yarn bobbing like little buoys, like dirty yarn with all the snakes and gators. I think they would just be like, what a weirdo, looking at my house. I was thinking, you know, I could literally up my contents insurance over this. This is stupid. I need to stop. So here's some of your stashy thoughts. Nina felt that the pandemic woke a lot of us up to our lifestyles, like our imbalance of how we were managing our emotions, how we were spending our time or not spending it that we could have. And it changed a lot of families' lives, and she's hoping that those positive changes will last. I agree. I think so too. Well, first of all, the economy is terrible and we're in this recession, and in that kind of climate, I think a lot of us are thinking, wow, I don't need to spend money on this stuff. A lot of my purchasing in the past was, I told you, it had a little to do with emotional, I was kind of grieving on the inside, and I was kind of picking myself up with, oh, that's nice. I really am not in a place where I can knit right now, but I will. If I buy this thing, I will. And then I would click and I would purchase, and it was just sort of kicking that emotional imbalance, fixing it like a can, kicking it down the road until later when I had the ability to say, wait, this isn't really going to make me feel better. Leah mentioned that Knitty Natty did a whole like stash down for a year, which I didn't realize. I haven't watched Knitty Natty in a long time. She went down to one skein, and I kind of scrolled through and watched some of the videos. Like, her stash wasn't grotesquely huge anyway to begin with, but she did stash down to one skein, and probably was moving maybe then too, and didn't count scraps as stash, which I do think we've talked a lot. Like the last episode, I talked a lot about scraps. I did that because so many of you, a lot of your stash is leftovers, one odd skeins, and scraps, and that was kind of for your benefit. Plus, I just like scrappy projects. I think they're super cool, and I love the idea of magic caking my leftovers. But I do see what you're saying, Leah, because honestly, to make a dent in my stash, I'm going to need to knit some blankets and sweaters. Occasionally, if you left me info about what your oldest, moldiest stash is, and if you're going to use it or how you will use it, I'll include that too. I will tell you that I am Michelle. Michelle, oldest stash yarn, mohair silk yarn from Rowan that she thought was so fine and so fancy when she was a new knitter. Bought it, was afraid to use it for years until she wasn't, but couldn't find it anymore. It's now an Andrea Mowry Illuminate, pronounced Illuminate, like the Seinfeld voice. So that was my oldest stash. Severian, oldest stash sock yarn that she doesn't need because she already has a million pairs of socks, but she wants to keep because she loves knitting socks. Severian keeps her stash in two different places. She's got project stash, and then she's got stash grouped in one big vacuum sealed bags, but grouped together by brand, but they're organized by like weight. And they're kept at her mom's house, which if only we were all so lucky to have a family member that would hold on to everything for us. I think I'm that person in my family. Like, my daughter randomly texted me a couple of days ago in the morning, "Do you still have my Hamtaro house?" I'm like, yeah, why? Just wondered. It's like, and I do. I still have the Hamtaro house. I know just where it is, and I want grandkids, I think. Anyway, I'm Michelle. I want grandkids, and I've kept Hamtaro just in case. Heather, oldest stash, odd skeins of acrylic that she's not sure she'll ever use because she doesn't really feel like making blankets, and acrylic yarn like that is mostly used for blankets. Wasn't sure what to do with her oldest stash because she's just not really into blanks. She has so many, and that is what I'm mostly going to be talking about as far as stash busting projects this episode. But just tune in, Heather, because you might find some other really good ideas for how to use that like scratchy man-made fiber. About stash busting, Janine just said, maybe someday. Karen, in discussing the marketing that I talked about in the last episode, she studied marketing for years, and she said that it was pretty horrifying, the psychological way they do people into buying, and it makes sort of a rebellion rise up in her. Like when she can tell she's being pressured to do it, she wants to do the opposite. So she really doesn't have trouble falling for marketing. But of course, like when she thinks it's time to purchase something, she's fine with doing it. It's not like marketing's the boogeyman, but she doesn't want to be easily led, which I can appreciate, Karen. Oh, I also have to say, Karen was talking about storing stuff like family photos and things, and she's got everything scanned and on hard drives, but not just hard drive. It's like everything is in 4 different places on 4 different hard drives. And those 4 different hard drives are stored in 2 different locations in case there's an accident or a fire or something. And I just have to say, Karen, when I read that comment on YouTube, I read it out loud to my husband and I said, see, I'm not crazy. We need multiple hard drives for these things. I am right there with you. This is the valuable stuff that I wouldn't want to lose. That's a little aside. Brandy mentioned something I've thought about when talking about stash down is, if everyone is thinking about stashing down, like we've all kind of collected around the same time. We all kind of saw all the wonderful wares on Instagram and we bought too much, and now we're all in the same place of like scratching our heads. What are we going to do with all this? We're all thinking stash down. What will this do to the indie dyers? And a few people chimed in. But one thing I thought about was that if you really like an indie dyer and you don't want to see their business like fold or anything, one thing you can do is, and I've made this now part of my goals. I tend to use more of my budget yarn for sweaters. I think I'm saving the indie dyed stuff, like it's subconscious, for special. And I think I need to use some, and make sure to brag on that dyer with hashtags and tagging them, and put it on Instagram. Put your hashtags and tag them. Put it in your stories. Put it on a Ravelry project if you can get on Ravelry, because that probably, honestly, if I did that, knitting with some of the yarn from dyers I love, it is definitely going to affect their business more than if I just say, hey, I'm stashing down this year. I'm not going to have any great negative impact on their business. But if I boast about what I do have from them, that's a way to drive business to them for people that are looking for indie dyed yarn. I also think there's so many people knitting now, and there's like, I don't know if you've noticed knitting podcasts lately, there's a ton of younger knitting podcasters, like a whole new generation, and it's like they're at it to have a business, clearly. There's a lot more people buying, so maybe that will also kind of mitigate the fact that those of us who've already bought a lot like won't be purchasing for a year or so. Anita Kreslin Knitting and Crochet worsted 100% acrylic yarn. It was beautiful colors with orange in them, but very, very scratchy. Has knit up into a beautiful pair of mittens that are a little scratchy. Anita collected for all the reasons. She listed like all the reasons pretty much anyone has said they gained a stash. She does charity knitting, she does sample knitting, which sounds like you're using your stash quickly, Anita. The new way she wants to kind of take control of what she does have is looking for gaps in her wardrobe and then shopping first her yarn and her pattern stash that she already owns. And then if she can't find what she needs, she'll go buy somewhere else, or she'll look in some favorites patterns online that she doesn't own and find it there. But she's trying to go first to what she has. That's a good idea. Elizabeth, Wool in the Gang, the wool in a very bright salmon color that will be mittens. Read Secondhand, that book by, I think, Andy Mintner. And she read that when dealing with her mother's belongings after she passed away. And she realized that she didn't want to leave this many things for her family to have to sort through and deal with once she was gone. And I looked up secondhand, and it looks like a really interesting book, because it's more than just him dealing with his family's mementos and cherished things after they pass away, but it has a lot to do with the secondhand business, what happens to family heirlooms and stuff. I'm really interested in reading that. I'm so glad you mentioned it, Elizabeth. I feel like I did some of that with going through my grandparents' things when they passed away, and my dad, and that's part of why I think my home is just a little cluttered. Like, we moved and we got it all in, but now there's things I need to organize or refinish so that we can use, things like that. But I don't want a lot of, like, my yarn would be easy for my family to deal with. Just give it away or sell it. But there's a lot of other stuff, like the photos that need to be on the hard drives, like Karen said. That haunts me a little. Like, I really need to get that done. Amanda, oldest stash, an old bag of scraps that still need to be sorted through. Might become knitted pants of some kind. Her stash grew as a new knitter when she was really excited and not very realistic about how much you can actually accomplish. And it was like, I'm going to make this and that and this and that. And then, reality sets in. You really can't do that fast. And so now there's just a lot of it. I was wondering what, like, knitted pants you were thinking of. I remember Andrea Rangel, and I might flash it up here, had Kalalok, and they were like biking capris that were knitted, and they were so cute. I never made them because Texas, but really cute. I can imagine they would be fitted enough to fit under something if you wanted to go wear them hiking or biking. And I'm just curious what pattern you're looking at. I'll have that one linked in the notes. She Bear has been thinking a lot about what part of the knitting community is really about bringing you in for community, and how much is about encouraging you to buy, consume, and I love this phrase, maniacally produce. I love that you said that phrase, She Bear. You felt overwhelmed by the result of all of your falling for it, buying, and you're starting to rethink your stash storage and your use of yarn. Maybe this Cal and people here can keep you accountable if that helps you. Hopefully just discussing how we organize and store things, along with why we've bought it, and finding different ways to deal with, like, all the stuff I talked about in the last episode. There are healthier ways to deal with all of that. I've been thinking about what you said, She Bear, about maniacally producing. And after that last episode, I was so pumped about posting regularly. I had applied for this part-time thing and hadn't heard for months, so I just didn't really think it was going to happen. It was like a writing thing for content writing. And then bam, they were like, oh no, we want you, and can you help us with this backlog of articles we need written? And I was just writing late into the night every day, and I was feeling a little stressed out. Then there was a trip we had planned. It was a family hiking trip. Had to do that. Got sick, and I was like, I'm not making anything for these stash busting episodes. I mean, I'm the worst example of using your stash because I haven't used anything. I haven't added to it, but I didn't do anything. And then I thought about your comment. Why should I feel like I have to maniacally produce? Like, I picked up a job. I got sick. I spent time with my family. What is this obligation? Like, I have to hold up a nice, pretty new thing that I made. I get it if, like, selling something, this is your business and you have to show something to get clicks, but I don't care about all that. So it was nice to read your comment, because I was thinking, oh, well, I just can't do it. And everybody's just going to have to deal with it. They're regular people too. No one's going to abandon their stash busting plans because I didn't finish a blanket in a week. I will mention again, especially because you were talking about, like, maybe accountability and rethinking your stash and how you view it and purchasing and all that. I've linked it below. Kendra's, she's Balance Gain on Instagram. Her Instagram has a link to her Discord. And if you need like more discussion and ready tips, and just there's a wealth of people chatting on there. It's a little too busy for me. Like, it almost stresses me out because I'm not a phone person. I don't carry my phone with me. I look at it a few times a day, and if there's a million messages, I feel a bit overwhelmed and I almost want to avoid them. Like, they're not all messages to me. It's just people chatting. But a lot of people, that's just easy for them, and they're constantly looking at it while they work during the day. So anyway, that might be helpful to you. Jen, oldest stash, a bag full of multicolored acrylic yarns that she's planning to use with her granddaughter to make hats for charity. Jen has worked her stash down to one bookshelf, and it looks really great and it's very organized, but it still makes her feel just a little stressed, like it's still a little much for her, which I think that's awesome, Jen. And I don't know, I'm gonna get there one day, and when I do, maybe I will feel like you, but I think probably I'll just be like Melanie and I'll be like, yeah, medium stash, that's good. Kat is trying to go through and remember why she loved all the stuff that she has, enough to acquire it in the first place, and then appreciate it. Like, it's always good. And that's part of why I think people want to look at their stash, so they can remember what they have, kind of drum up excitement about using it rather than just going to Instagram and buying more. Kat, I remember listening to a podcast, I think it was Libby Johnson, saying that she went to someone's house, or maybe she went to some sort of open house at a place, and it was a really fine, beautiful home, beautiful grounds, or something like that. I think it was Libby. And it didn't make her jealous, but it did make her want to come home and clean her house. And then she felt really good about her space. I get that. I have actually, like, seeing all the things that someone else has, it doesn't like fill me with envy at all, but it does make me remember, oh, I have something like that. I could do something like that, and it will kind of excite me about the things I already own. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of what you're talking about, like reacquainting yourself with what you have and kind of seeing it anew. Anna would buy things thinking, well, it'll be a gift, or it's such an unusual fiber. I've never worked with this before, and it collected. It hasn't been used. And so now she has a more rigorous criteria for buying something. It has to be able to be a pullover that she would feel comfortable wearing against her skin, and she actually knows she would use. I feel like, Anna, it might be you who said you just know you're not going to knit anything greater than worsted weight or Aran. You're just never going to knit bulky knits. That's another one too, when we realize, like, I think I just need to go ahead and cry uncle with cotton summer t-shirts. I'm not saying I won't knit anymore, but I certainly don't ever need to buy more cotton for summer knits. I'm not enjoying making them. I have a bazillion projects planned and the yarn for them. That's one of those realistic criteria I need to have in the front of my mind from now on when I look at, purchasing something. Virginia, oldest stash, some fingering weight yarns that she held together to create Nivea's socks, her own pattern, and she added some sporty stripes at the top. Virginia's felt that a project was almost done just after extensive planning. The planning was so much fun and so enjoyable that by the time, purchasing all the supplies, figuring out how you're going to do it, you get all the stuff and it's like, I have a feeling of completion, it's done. And then the supplies sit there and it's not actually made. I can imagine for you as a designer too, that would be really easy to do because you're doing a lot of excessive planning. And then you have to photograph things and think of pattern layouts and stuff like that. Like, you do a whole lot more in the creation of a knitted object than, say, the regular knitter who buys patterns. I totally think that's true of me. And I think Katie said the same thing, that just thinking about the doing started to take the place of the doing. And Melanie made a comment that, you know, buying for knitting has become a secondary hobby to knitting. I have that impulse. Like, I think I like to plan stuff too, but there's plenty of ways I can do that without spending a dime and without buying more supplies than the ones I already haven't used. Like, I can plan my garden. I can plan how I'm gonna tackle a project or clean something or organize my stash, you know. Another thing that's kind of busied that aspect of my brain is kind of realigning my queue, like looking through projects and thinking, I had that earmarked for something else, but I've changed in size. That's not enough for that. Kind of like I said I would do with this Lopi yarn. Like, actually, I still have enough of it to make a sweater the right size for me, but I may not make, this is why my yarn room's a mess. I may not make the one that I had planned. I earmarked that years ago and my taste changed. So that keeps my mind busy too, as long as I have things in my Ravelry stash or written or accounted for somewhere and I can kind of think of what the color is or see an image of it. I usually photograph everything. Some recent blanket yarn I've bought for gifts I haven't photographed yet. But that is one way to busy that side of the brain that likes to plan. Lori has been taking the yarn that no one wants at like her little knit nights that she goes to. They do like a yarn swap and no one wants it. And she's like, well, I love it. And she'll take it. And that is a way to grow stash. But a cool thing about that is you can always drop yarn you don't want also off at the swap table. Nancy isn't ashamed about the stash, but isn't wanting to add to it either. Enjoying the stash as much as possible now. Pretty much like Midnight Knitter is literally saving rather than buying yarn. Like, not just saying, I'll just save the money and doesn't buy the yarn, is literally taking the money that would go toward yarn and putting it in a separate savings account. I don't know if that's just so you can, like, it's your fun money and you just want to reserve it, see how it grows by having some willpower, seeing how much you can gain and then really enjoy buying something at the end of the year with it, or if you're doing it just as an experiment. But I think that would be a really cool study. I'm too lazy to do that study, but to see how much would I have spent. Like, it's been a couple of years I haven't bought much yarn, but right when I first stopped, that would have been a really interesting study to see how much can I save by not buying yarn. I might not like the answer. That's a really great experiment. Yeah, I said it's been a couple of years since I've felt like I was buying too much. At this point, anything I add is going to feel like too much, but I don't feel like I'm like excessively consuming, like buying, purchasing. And I am almost through with birthday month. Today is the 22nd. This is my birthday month. And I used to joke that birthday month meant yarn month, just to my husband. And we were mostly joking, but that is like what I wanted for my birthday, was to get some yarn. I have not made one yarn purchase. I haven't even felt like it. Like, I woke up on my birthday and I see like everybody is wooing me with the points, from Michael's to Madeline Tosh. They're like, you have rewards points, extra $5 off. It's your birthday. And I like started to click on one and I was like, I don't feel like waiting for this page to load. And I just didn't bother. And I still haven't. And of course I'm not going to go back now. I took advantage of Akia's birthday because I needed some stuff there, some like home basics. But again, I got $10 off for my birthday, but that was it. I didn't even want to purchase yarn. That is a very good sign. That made me so happy when I realized that. I was writing up my notes here for you. I was thinking of a lot of the phrases that I hear when people talk about yarn. See if you remember some of these. Oh, this speaks to me. This yarn just speaks to me. Or I'm finally Sable, like Melanie was saying. Sheesh, I think I'm Sable. Some people have shoes, some people have yarn. I only buy yarn with a project in mind. And I mean, that works for them, but that does not work for me. I have a mile-long queue all of it is stuff with yarn that I bought with the project in mind. And never mind that some of those projects are so super dated. Like I'll share some with you. The Novelty Fuzzy Yarn Cat Bed and the Stitch and Bitch book. Probably not going to make that, especially since we've discovered the fake lambskin little rug thing that all of the pets are fighting over. The lion neck cardigan. Oh, do you remember that Wendy Bernard lion neck cardigan? So many people made that. It had like a ruffle. It's like a kind of a dated style now, although it's probably about to come right back in. It's just probably perfect timing for me to finally make my lion neck. A lot of these are early 2000s things, like Debbie Stoller's poster boy satchel with a colorwork image, like silhouette image of, I don't know, someone famous. I was going to replace it with this Spock tapestry. Elena Nitz, a friend of mine, did a cell phone cozy, the cell phone sleeve. That's still useful. Of course, you'd have to make it a lot bigger now. And it's kind of funny. Like, does anyone do that anymore? I just feel like everyone pretty much, I'm not really like this, but this phone is here all the time and their eyes are on it. Like, who sticks it in a sleeve anymore? That was kind of nostalgic. The Dwarven Bonnet, probably, yeah, I did it. I already did the Dwarven Bonnet. Did it. I love that people are still doing it 15 years later. I checked in on that project page, and the most recent one, I just read in the notes, had to reinstall beard 3 times. It just totally made me laugh. Karate sweater, never gonna do it. Too much errata. I am done with that kind of project. I reused the yarn for something else. Oh, Terry short shorts. I'm not, well, I mean, I might. That might be fun. Oh, the Oud Snood. Yeah. I had the Oud Snood in the queue. That is no longer for sale. So I won't be doing that. I actually went through a lot of my old favorites and some of my queue items, and I deleted ones that I know I'm never going to do. But if they were fun, I just moved them to fun, my little bundle for fun, or tagged them weird or whatever. So I was just going to go through recent emails with you guys. I think I'm getting 3 emails from Michaels a day. Oh my gosh, that just, I'm deleting everything but yarn stuff just to show you guys. This is crazy. This is all yarn. This is yesterday and today. It is all yarn stuff except for 3 YouTube comments that I got. So it's stuff, I'm deleting them all right now. Newsletter, Joanne, good deals, Michael's rewards, +5 for $30 on Sockies. Getting rid of it. Great closeout. Sock inspiration. 15% off Gentle Giant yarn. 20% off your purchase in the store. Marketplace beta soft launch. 5 for $30. Wrap yourself in a new blanket project. Take 20% off. 40%. Pre-orders are open. Gosh, okay. That was 2 days worth. That was very therapeutic. Thank you. How do you stay focused on your current stash? Kat is treating crochet time and knitting time like a reward, allowing herself to indulge rather than the shopping as the reward. So if the crochet and knitting time is limited, just make that the reward and focus on that. And I love that right now she's crocheting seat covers for a truck, for her car and her son's car. I've got to see these seat covers. I want to see these so bad. Please somewhere post them or message me, Kat, where I can see these. I love it. Or if it's a pattern that you have. I'm just so interested. I've never seen anyone do that. I mean, that sounds horrible for Texas. I'm just thinking, blah, sweat. But it sounds really cool and fun to make. My thoughts, things I saw other people doing as far as organization. was the typical stuff you would think about. Summer and winter yarn separate. Some people doing it by color in their, color coded pretty rainbow bins. That really doesn't make sense to me. If you're really wanting to stash down, you need your project yarn ready. You need to be able to see how much you have of what. So are you keeping track of your yarn via Ravelry? A lot of people can't get on it anymore, but I still try to take photos of everything and log how many skeins of something. Where I mess up is that I forget to, when I start a project, use stash for it. And so it will say I still have the yarn when I really don't. But I usually remember the truth. So my stash looks bigger than it is on Ravelry. But I know the difference. It's really helpful though to see it and to see the colors there. I try not to do a lot of photo editing for stash pictures. I mean, that's so over the top anyway. But so that the colors are pretty clear and I can kind of mix and match and keep track of yarn weights that would work together. That's kind of fun planning, like Virginia was talking about. Here's what I've been doing. This is what I did before the move. Since the move, things got jumbled around and it's been difficult to get to them. So I've just been like setting stuff on top. Should I just take you to see? Maybe. Cotton I would keep out on a shelf in the open mostly. Some projects, especially if it was like indie dyed yarn that was combinations of colors, I would just leave them in sacks that I bought them in maybe as a project. And I have a couple of places where just project yarn is ready to go as project yarn. Then I had like some bins, sort of like I've seen a lot of online, of things by brand, because that tended to all be the same weight. So like Knit Picks, yarns I get at Joann, they're mostly worsted. I have one that's like super bulky because I also get like Lion Brand Thick and Quick for different things. I have at least one that's super bulky like that. And I have one that's sock yarn. But then I have just little stuff tucked here and there or partly finished things, and it's just not very organized anymore. But I still like that system where wool is all in one place, divided by brands and or weight. Actually, for all of my leftovers. If it's small amounts, I have a place where I do like DK and worsted and Aran leftovers, and then I have a little thing for, so fingering and sport go in a separate one. And that's what I do with all those little balls. So 2 places for that. Here's your stash ideas. Anna does it by yarn weight. And you've weeded out the heavier weights. That's, yeah, it was you, Anna, that you just don't like working with. It doesn't feel good with your hands, so you don't use them. And you've also chosen to go with natural fibers. You don't want to use man-made fibers just for the environmental impact. Katie, oldest stash 2 skeins of lace weight cotton mint for granny square accessories that will probably never happen, but never say never. You went nuts after episode 63, organizing your stash, which I feel like should have been organized already. I mean, you've been destashing for a long time and you're pretty consistently making projects. But in one afternoon, giving stuff away, you've made a lot of stuff, you have it down to like 2 shelves on a bookshelf, which is so awesome. I would say that's hashtag small stash, but you might consider it medium. I don't know. Wowie. That's all I have to say to that. Wowie, and now I'm gonna go jump off a cliff. Katinka doesn't have a lot of yarn stash, but does have a lot of fabric stash. And I'm gonna link her Seamstress at the Cottage video about organizing her fabric stash. Katinka has the cutest little house, and it's also her business cottage where she does really beautiful seamstress work, is always making things. So I would imagine you have to have a large fabric stash. And keeping it organized, I noticed she repeated some things that people who have like professional yarn businesses say, like keeping it out of the sun. She rotates her products, her fabric around so that one group won't sit in the sun for too long because it does fade the fabric. And I did hear Nimble Needles on YouTube say that you can have fading in your yarn. I've never really thought about it because I'm always cramming stuff in a dark box, but that's something to think about. And I linked her video so you can see how she did it, because she's not like just installing some more shelves in this closet area and organizing it with baskets and little boxes. They look like handmade wooden boxes. Did you make those yourself, Katinka? It's just really like, it makes me want to wander in and pick up some fabric and sew, if I knew how to sew. So what kind of things do you make with little fabric scraps? Like with yarn scraps, we talked about a bunch in the last episode. What do you do with lots of little fabric scraps, Katinka? Oh, also in Katinka's video, in the middle of it, was a little turtle on the floor. I love your little animal zoo of a house, Katinka. I looked up a Lion Brand video, Nimble Needles, that I'm going to link, and Watch Barbara Knit, which I didn't finish Watch Barbara Knit, but she does talk about organizing stash. And I'll link those things. They're just some extra things to watch. I'm not necessarily new. I noticed though, videos 2018, 2019, and that's when a lot more podcasts came out. So you're really going to see a lot of stash talked about, and that word a ton, from 2018 forward. They were more about, yeah, let's get some more and let's make this stash look pretty. Now it's more like, hey, whoa, let's not use so much. Let's see how we can use it up and maybe make it look pretty while we're using it. That was neat to see that kind of turn of events. So a few things I learned and things I just thought of is, if you don't want, like me, I don't want to get any new furniture. I really don't want to buy new anything to store all this. I will if it makes my life easier, but I feel like I have enough storage crap. You can reuse grocery bags to just bundle a project's worth of yarn or two together, loosely tie them, and then put them inside a bin to keep those project skeins together or different size skeins together, all while they're in a large bin. And you know, thrift stores have Rubbermaid type plastic containers and plastic bags, and sometimes those bags that sheets or bedspreads and duvet covers come in, those make really good yarn storage bags too. That's a good way to store your yarn and keep moths out without like buying new stuff or, you know, contributing to more plastics being made. A really good idea I saw from Nimble Needles was for skeins that are loose so that they don't like constantly unwind, take a barrette and just clip that yarn into the rest of the yarn. That is a very smart idea. I think that he was using those little kind barrettes that you pop to open, but any barrette or hairpin would work. And I don't know if you're like me, like I always have a bazillion hairpins that I never use. If I just had them like in a little cup in my wherever I keep my yarn or wherever I'm working on projects, I would totally use that hack. And that's another thing you can get secondhand if you want. If you don't want to buy more and be part of more stuff in the world. Vacuum storage bags. I have some of those. And I do them like by yarn type. Like, this is just my Brooklyn tweed yarn. And it's in this sack. And I think it's all loft or shelter. And I know where to find it, and moths can't get in. And for a while there, it was more stuff was packed in it. I do have some of these vacuum bags. I felt bad buying them because I don't like to use plastics, but at the same time, I was like, I gotta control the runoff of yarn. Oh, a really good idea Nimble Needles had was throwing in those little silica gel packs that you'll get in clothing, new clothing or shoes or something that you buy, keeping them and throwing them into a bucket or a bag with your yarn if you're worried about mold. I always throw those away because I have dogs that eat anything that hits the floor, and I have a fear they'll eat them and die. So I won't keep those, but if you don't have pets and you're not worried about it, that would be a really smart way to fend off any mold. So a lot of people are showing off their stash, and I think actually it's, if you're really looking for views, like if your YouTube is a business, it's just part of what you got to do right now, I guess, or you feel you do as a YouTuber. I also think for some people, I know for some people, it's accountability. And a lot of people enjoy just watching what other people have. You know, I can see if you're like, oh, here's a beautiful skein of this and that, but I don't know. I can show you guys my yarn closet, but if I were to go through each bucket and say, look, there's this thing called Lion Brand yarn. I mean, you're gonna be so bored. Like, this is the color red. I don't know. I feel like that would make my already too long videos over the top long form. It would basically be a Joe Rogan episode, minus the the smoking and the karate talk. Let's do it. As far as the yarn closet I talk about, like this is my grandmother's chair that my sister used and I used, my mom used. That's sweet. And that's like a quilted pillow. My great-grandmother made these quilts squares and didn't finish quilting them together, but I got that one as a birthday gift when I was 10. Anyway, I don't know if I want to do this. What do you think? That's not too bad, right? I mean, it's not too bad. And in the very back, the stuff in the back isn't yarn. It's like storage of family mementos, photos, stuff like that. But here's the thing. This goes to the side. It's pretty bad, okay? Okay, but keep in mind that underneath, you can see that's yarn right there. Underneath that is other stuff in storage. So like these bottom things, they're not yarn. They're other things. And these are like boxes of yarn thrown on top. Now, what a lot of these are is like blanket stuff. Blanket stuff. And that is a big giant IKEA sack full of t-shirt yarn to make a t-shirt rug. Jane Richmond's rug pattern is what I plan to use. You can see that that's yarn. And that one too. It's bad. Basically, this is an ASMR. You want an ASMR nightmare? The sounds of my so-called handmade life. Okay, well, I need to get a few things to show you. Okay, so let's switch to the stuff we're working on right now. I'll show you some things I have finished since we last talked. You saw my Sophie scarf and the Lion Brand leftovers. I got that upcycle alpaca wool blend, which is soft. It's pretty soft. And I made 2 Sophies with one skein. So this one, I made one for my daughter first in the right length, and then I used whatever was left for myself. So like, she said she would wear it. We'll see. It seems like something she would do because she wears little cute neck stuff. But it's kind of the color, the very petite neck color. I feel like it's soft. It's softer than a normal worsted yarn. And I'm hot right now from digging in that stash room, but stash closet, not a room, but it is really comfortable. And when I was on that trip doing that birthday hike, I did wear it in the evenings and it felt really good, and I didn't take it off because it was cold all the places we went. So this is something that I finished, and this is a really easy way to bust stash. You can do a bunch. So this one was holding mohair silk with regular sport weight. This is just a DK weight by itself. But Pam has made a few of these too. And one looks, it's a more luxurious fabric, but it's the same color, which is very petite knit, right? But also very classic neutral to go with everything. Another thing I did was I showed you guys, I think, that I finished this super slouchy, like Positive Ease Christmas sock. It's like really roomy. I went ahead and did the 64 stitch sock for a classic heel turn, and I actually think that's too big for me, but it was fine because I was wanting a big cushy sock, and I got big and I got cushy. This is a very cushy big sock, and this is my like accidental Christmas colorway, but I knew it was going to look like this. It's Jade District by Knit Picks Hawthorne. And I'm this far, almost to the heel turn. Actually, I'm on the heel turn in the second pair. I really like this little barber pole micro striping. I think it's fun. That's something I worked on before my wrist started hurting. I put my sweaters, Leelanau and Illuminate, on hold to like finish the baby blanket. So I'm going to show you the blanket when I talk to you more about blankets. But I wanted to talk about what you guys are making, what your stash busting projects right now are. So Hannah, oldest stash, bag of polyester yarn from her grandmother that she has been using to make crocheted bins and baskets, but might follow Kat's advice and create dish scrubbies. Yeah, Hannah's quandary of what to do with yarn that you probably wouldn't wear next to your skin because it's before modern acrylics and it's not comfortable. I love Kat's idea of making dish scrubbies or cleaning scrubbies for bathrooms or kitchens. I think that's a wonderful idea, and I think I would do that. If you're really into doing lots of little things with little bits, those of you whose stash consists of a lot of leftovers, that's a great idea. Hannah's been building up her stash, but with recycled sweater yarn, so you don't have to worry about environmental costs of this hobby, and it's not as hard on your pocketbook. I do think though, if you already have too much stash, going to Goodwill or a thrift store to get sweaters to recycle, it may not cost a lot, but it's still a space taker. And for a while I had a little bin, a little plastic box of sweaters I was going to rip back, and I only ripped one back. I kept two and just wore them, and the rest I gave away. Elizabeth has 4 Be Simple shawls made from scraps on her needles, and I love that you've got a project like that you can walk away from and come back to and know what to do. And it sounds like you can make them as big as you want them to be. That's awesome. That's kind of what I want my granny stripe blanket to be like, but you know, it never budges. May doesn't have a big stash, but enjoys this conversation all the same, and has been modifying sock patterns for a very small ankle, so 48 stitches instead of 56, and is also planning on knitting a sweater with some destash yarn. She didn't destash it, she bought it from a dyers destash, and it's really pretty. Like, it looks like it's kind of tweedy and heathered orange yarn. I am excited to see what you make with that, May. Sarah Jane's already sorted her stash and started knitting a Goodnight Day pattern, which I feel like I need to knit at least one Goodnight Day pattern a year. Carla, oldest stash, Fiddlesticks knitting yarn, Entice, which will be a Cape Lookout shawl. I like that you're using your stash yarn for those Lindsay Fowler patterns from Salt and Timber. They're so beautiful. The Cape Lookout pictures in particular are just the colors. That's going to be really beautiful. A tailor's granddaughter knit up some terry cloth type yarn into the Stashbusting tube top by Iris Makes, and it's super cute. Puck is making, and tell me if I'm saying your name wrong, Puck, but you're making an anthology throw, which another knitter in the group is talking about making too. That anthology throw is so, it looks so conducive to magic cakes made of knotted scraps. For those who have scraps or who don't, you know, if you have you're shy a sweater's amount of yarn, or you have a sweater's amount, you could definitely make a big anthology throw. It makes me think of Wild Mystic by Annie Lupton, which I always thought would be better as a throw or a bedspread, like in the like a medallion in the center of your bed, than even a shawl. This anthology looks like it is just gradual changes in color. I'm not sure. I just love yours. I think those beautiful reds, kind of ruby and purple colors, they're just really beautiful evening type colors. In that Larke Bagger book, Close Knit, she talks about a type of triple knot that she makes. I didn't really understand how to do it. She has even an illustrated image. It didn't click for me, but it does sound to me like, as far as making magic knots, I've been using the traditional magic knot, but there's a couple of different types that I've seen online. And hers just to me sounds like, honestly, it makes me think of when I was a new knitter, and I was so afraid everything was going to fall apart on me, you know, just like unknit suddenly, that I would like forget spit splicing. I was going to knot, and I was going to try this knot and that knot, and I'm making up knots, and I have these like ends that are just knotted, and then I leave them on the inside. That's what it made me think. If Macon, you have knit Larke's patterns before, or if anyone knows what that triple knot is, please inform me. I'm really interested in how to do it, and I couldn't find anything online, but she does so much knot tying in her patterns. I kind of wanted to try her method out when knitting one of her patterns, which I want to do this year. Katie said she's a knot tyer and proud of it. See, this could be one of our t-shirts, knot tyer and proud of it. Or not tire, not a fighter. You guys, we're missing our marketing opportunity here. Norma is knitting the Helgun socks, and that is by Anna Knitter, who I hadn't ever heard of. But I really like the patterns I saw, and I'm gonna flash some here for you. Her highlighter sock pattern also looks a little like one you just finished, Jen, from Stephen West. And I put that in our stash bundle. I mean, our Stashbusting the New Year bundle, which I also have linked. And another one by Anna Knitter. It's called, like, I think Mystery Advent Cal. And it's just a striped sock pattern, but with each Advent color change, you have a texture change, which works great for you guys whose stash is scraps. But if your stash isn't scraps, I saw someone do a solid color, and those textural stripes look so neat and just a solid sock. I thought it was a really cool idea. So that's also in our stash busting bundle. Ophelia mentioned latch hook, and that's a good way to get rid of little bitty scraps. And so those of you, if that's a lot of what you've got, you know, we have all the things we talked about here. But latch hook, she said Fruity Knitting just had a video on that, which I haven't watched, but I'm going to link to it for you guys. I also mentioned to you a while back that Dawn Barker is a dyer, and she has her yarn ties from her skeins, and she would just have a million of them, so she started using them for latch hook projects, and she would make really awesome, fluffy, look like flocati pillows or a wall hanging or something out of them. So awesome looking, very much like this. This is loops, but that is the look of the latch hook that Dawn did. And so I'm linking the Fruity Knitting thing, but it made me think, and this might be a good way to stash bust. Kat chimed in the, I believe it was Kat, in the comments and mentioned that you can make your own latch hook device or your own crochet hook out of a toothbrush even. So there's a lot of low cost ways if you don't want to get into a new hobby. I do think the latch hook though is pretty cheap at Joann. But you could use a crochet hook. You do not have to do that. Buy special tools. But this one is by Heidi Gustad, who is Hands Occupied online, and I love this. I thought this book was so much fun. She teaches you how to do latch hook, and then look how cute on the back of a jacket. That could also be the side of a tote bag, a rug. This is a nice big project for destashing. Especially if you don't mind the tedious stuff, like the little bits. Like Macon doesn't love the yarn bundles. You might not love latch hooking. I was thinking of those IKEA stools that everybody has on their design channels. They're really cheap, and how cute they look when they have a cover over them. Oh, this is a tote bag idea. Oh, and here, I think this one's fun, especially if you have pets. A faux shearling throw. This fringed bag is really cute. So that's super long, luxurious fringe. This is the fried egg. Like, it could be a throw or a rug. I think that's so cute, and that would be really cute in a kitchen. But you're right, Ophelia, latch hook would be an excellent way to use small bits of stash. So what about pattern stashing? Are you guys having trouble not collecting that? I think I had this idea like, but it's reading material. And I have this unspoken rule: if it's reading material or music, it's worth spending. Not if you don't actually have the money. But if you have the money, it's usually worthwhile to support the arts. Katie said that that's still a weakness for her, the pattern shopping. I think I'm finding the ability to say no to book-only pattern. I still feel like, that sense of I need to complete my collection with Pom Pom. And they are consistently putting out patterns. I mean, the magazines are usually full of things I want. Anita is also trying to shop her pattern stash too. Katie has been deleting stuff from her queue that she does not own the pattern for. That's going to keep her focused on shopping her pattern stash first. Then, you know, she made bundles and favorites with some of those things that she'd like to make but doesn't own the pattern for. So I wondered if you guys are stashing down on patterns too. Leah, you mentioned that, you know, some people don't see like using scraps is really putting a dent in their stash, and it's not going to for me. You saw my stash. I have right there in the front is a lot of blankets worth of stash. One of them, the blankets I have, and I have all the yarn for it, it's buried in there, and I just don't want to bother. I don't want to make a huge mess because I have to put all this up really fast. But it is the traveling Afghan blanket, and I saw someone online made one in a solid color, but all the different squares designed by different, there's a knit version and a crochet version by different makers. Really neat in a solid color, but I got grays, cream, I think, and turquoise. 2 colors of blue and turquoise. And I've made 3 squares, maybe 4, and then I stopped. So that's one I need to do. I just have to dig it up. But that's the thing. The beginning, the opening of that closet is all things like this. This is t-shirt scraps. There's one thing of fabric here, but it's tons of t-shirt scraps for a rag rug. I want to do Jane Richmond's crochet circular rug, and I will. I could probably make 2 really good sized ones with all these scraps. So it's like, this is 2 projects. It's really big and really heavy, but it is 2 projects that wouldn't take that long because that crochet purse I made with fabric, t-shirt fabric, was so fast. And then there's always the ever stagnant granny stripe. I have these mandala cakes to make baby blankets and or gift blankets with. These are for baby blankets. I thought I would, since to make a full-size throw for an adult, these make pretty thin stripes. And maybe it would take 2, but I'm doing it for a baby blanket. It's a smaller blanket, so it's going to be pretty thick rainbow stripes. I think to get more color, I think I'm going to use 2 at once. I think these are pretty complementary. This one's a little more subtle. This one's a little brighter. And between the 2, it might be kind of like this one might tone this one down. And I really don't want to do the whole cut, and I don't want to worry about cutting and magic knotting, really. I just like to use these and run with it. So I think I'll do that. Oh, I know I'm doing this. This is the one that the person I was going to teach to crochet doesn't want to do it. So I'll either give it away or I'll use it to make for my sister because she always likes crochet blankets and her dog likes crochet blankets. Basically, the dog likes her blanket. So another knit. or crochet that's a blanket, this all around summer towel. I'm not finished with it, but I'm over halfway, I think. It's going to be like a river blanket, and it has beads at the end, and it's got just this little kind of like lace detail on the edges. It's meant to be like a yoga mat or beach blanket. I'm going to use it for sitting by the river. So there's that. And I have this blanket that I'm working on at the moment. It is the rainbow blanket. It's that baby blanket that I showed you. I'm using retro rainbow colors. So these 3 colors mixed with the ones I'm already working with, and I'm already ready to add my 3rd color in. This is not super neat, okay? I have never done color work like this where I don't want to have a bunch of cuts and weave-in ends. I'm trying to kind of hold and crochet around a strand. So I don't think this looks terrible. I don't think that's a terrible edge for the rainbow. I love it. I love the freeing feeling of not knowing what I'm doing and I don't really care. And Mom, who's going to get this, is learning to crochet and says it's hard. So I have a feeling she'll be super patient with a less than perfect line here. But I am having fun doing it, and it's different. It's different. It works my hands differently, so that's like cross training. But it's also just a fun little design, and it's kind of fun to learn something new using crochet. I did look up how to set up your color change in the stitch before the one that needs to be the new color change. I did look that up because that was really messy, and I think it's a lot neater since I looked that up. This was for that MCM blanket, so mid-century modern. Are you so sick of hearing MCM too? This is basic stitch, which I had never used before, but Rachel has assured me via her Instagram that it does not pill. These are the colors I'm using for it. And this is for my room. So this is the background color and these are the others. This is for my bedroom because those colors kind of work with a painting of my grandmother's that's on the wall. But see, this is like one project, but it is huge. And I have several of these taking up residence. So that's part of what that mess is. So really, if I just get like these 4 blankets done, huge space created by that. Here's some other projects for those of you who want to get rid of a big chunk of yarn all at once with blankets. Let's just go ahead and kind of finish this blanket talk because several of you have suggested them to me for good stash busting projects, and I totally agree with you. You see my plans for stash busting with blankets. Denise said the Jelly Roll blanket by Kay Jones is a really great, and I'm going to flash these up here for you, is faster than the Cozy Memories. And I would imagine, I had this faved, but I didn't ever read it closely. You don't seam. So I guess you're casting on like stitches for each strip. I love that. No seaming. It looks really cute. That's a good one. I definitely put that in our stash busting bundle and in my queue. Here's a few other large blanket projects. And now this one is another Larke Bagger. So it is scrappy, but it doesn't have to be this scrappy. And if you had self-striping yarns. But she talks about how to make her bad idea sweater into a blanket. And it's basically just strips that you sew together. That's totally fun. And honestly, if you made it like a throw or a blanket, you could leave it with uneven edges. It made me think of this one from way back when in the Alternates book. This is a Lee Radford book, 2003. So many good things in here, but I'm just going to show you some larger projects. One was a cushion cover, which I thought was super cute, the idea of this. Still love this idea. Now I think this is actually made out of sweaters, cut and possibly felted from a thrift store. But the inspiration is the same if you were knitting these strips yourself, and or knitting strips to felt, which talk about being a stash buster. If you have a lot of wool and you don't want like a big sweater out of it, but you have all these various colors, you could totally do this. Make your felted strips and just knit stripes for a bit of a strip and then call it quits. Felt it, see how it comes out, and then adjust. So this blanket does have rough edges, you can see, and there's a kind of a template for the size of each piece, but this gives you an idea of how the finished project looked. And it was very alternative. I always thought that was the cutest idea. This is a t-shirt rug. I was talking about doing Jane Richmond's circular crochet rug in t-shirt yarn. This one is made for t-shirt yarn, also in alternates. I really do love these. This is very modern take on a rag rug. This one is this love blanket, but it's just a little bit, you wouldn't even need a pattern for this. It's just a little inspiration. They've done some applique. This is from Greetings from Knit Cafe. Just a striped blanket with fringe and appliqued letters on it. But you could always do duplicate stitch. I do like the patchworky look of the applique. And this book was the one from Lina, Crochet Crush by Mala Mills. And oh, this is full of so many good crochet patterns. The little ones are great, the big ones are great. I love every pattern in here, but I want to just show you large patterns that would get rid of a ton of stash. Let me just show this one. This one's not large, but isn't this little tote the best? Keto blanket. Really cute. These are very visual. They're all 2-color blankets, I believe. The Kanoki carpet. This is very thick. This looks like it's made out of heavy duty wool, but you could make a blanket, like a blanket, a throw with lighter weight. Here's that one again, under a table as a rug. So if you have heavy duty fibers that you would want to use for a more, it's crocheted, but more of a woven type heavy rug, and you don't have My Pets, that would be the cutest rug. Eta blanket. So cute. It looks so summery and picnic-like. I love that little fringe on the end. I always love plaid, always. Was it Hannah that's making storage bins, crochet storage bins? There's so many cute ideas for little crochet bags and storage bins. Here's another little runner rug that would be so cute in a bathroom, or it's a polku, or in like a kitchen or a hallway. Gosh, I would be so proud to have such a cute, and that's really, this vibe is so trendy right now. I would be so proud to have a hand knit or hand crocheted runner rug in my house. So Mala has another older book called Modern Crochet, which I got used, and it's like super beat up, but there's some other patterns in here that are very similar to those, and more big storage bins. She has several doily style rugs. So they're just little small rugs. This one's really cute. This looks like a baby blanket I made once to me. Another one I thought about was the Keks blanket by Stephen West, which I wonder, since he spent so much time in Iceland with Cerelia Rose, I wonder if that's named after the Keks bakery that was later the Keks hostel, because it's such a classic place to visit in Iceland. And Katie and I went there, and it was so neat. The inside of it was neat. And yes, that blanket looks like something you would find on the back of one of those thrift store looking couches in their lounge area. That's another one that I think would be a fun make to really bust some stash, and I would want it larger than that. So my question for you guys is, what are some projects that you could do, you would like to stash bust with, that take major yardage, but not blankets? Because we've talked a lot about blankets this time. I mean, you can totally share your blankets with me, but I'm also looking for some non-blanket major stash busting projects. So I would really be interested in hearing your creative ideas. Oldest. But yarn is not beef jerky.